One of the biggest challenges with React Native today is that if you need something as simple as a date picker, a context menu, a switch, or even a slider, you usually have to search the web for a community package. You're hoping it's well maintained, free of bugs, and ideally licensed under MIT so you can actually use it without issues. Now, don't get me wrong, the React Native community is amazing and there are plenty of great packages out there, but for beginners, this process can feel pretty overwhelming. And even if you are experienced, it often means juggling multiple dependencies just to cover the basics. That's exactly the problem Expo UI aims to solve. Instead of hunting for packages, you can import just the native components you need, whether it's a switch, a slider, a symbol button, context menu, or a list, without adding a bunch of extra dependencies. And with that, I'm excited to share that Expo UI is now available in beta for iOS. In today's video, we'll learn how to craft beautiful SwiftUI views using modern SwiftUI primitives with Expo UI. Right now, the beta only supports iOS. Android support with Jetpack Compose is already in the works, and we're hoping to have a beta version available in the next SDK release. So keep in mind, this is iOS only for now. Let's dive in. We recently added this document about building SwiftUI applications with Expo UI, and I want to give you a high-level overview of the features that come with Expo UI. First of all is that we get one-to-one mapping to SwiftUI. That means that you can use SwiftUI components in your React Native application, and also you can expect the same behavior and same properties, modifiers, and the way SwiftUI works, it's the way that Expo UI works. You can write your entire application using Expo UI, or you can just take advantage of some of the components. Let's say that you only need a daytime picker, or you only need a context menu, a button with the liquid glass design. Well, you can just use Expo UI for that. Or if you prefer, build the entire thing with Expo UI. Another great feature of Expo UI is that you can combine SwiftUI views with normal React Native components. And that includes as well DOM components and custom 2D components using React Native Skia, for example. To install Expo UI, you can simply run npx expo install Expo UI in your project. Right now, I have here a project that already comes with Expo UI. So if I go to the packages, you can see that I'm using the Alpha 5. After you install this dependency, you need to use a development build and install it on your simulator. If you want to see the liquid glass design, you need to compile it with Xcode 26. So I already created a development build. I have here my iOS folder, and this is how it looks. I'm using Expo Router version 6 with the native tabs, and if you are curious about that, I'm going to leave a link in the description of another video that I created showing you how to implement them. All right, once you installed Expo UI and created a development build, we can start using components from Expo UI. So let's see this quick example showing a circular progress. I'm going to copy the entire view. Let's go back to my basic usage video screen, and nothing crazy here, just this component with a scroll view. And let's go ahead and replace this for a view from React Native. And then let's import host from Expo UI SwiftUI. This will only work for iOS at the moment, so we need to import directly from SwiftUI. Now, when you are using Expo UI, you need to wrap your components with a host. That's why we're wrapping this circular progress. And let me actually import this from SwiftUI as well. And then a text. Now this text is going to come from React Native. So let's take a look at the import. We're importing circular progress. And before we can render it, we need to wrap it into a host. Here's a nice explanation of the host. It's basically a container for SwiftUI views. And you can think of it like the SVG in the DOM or the canvas in React Native Skia. Under the hood, it uses UI hosting controller, which is a UIKit view controller that manages a SwiftUI view hierarchy. So that's how we are using SwiftUI under the hood. And I'm going to press save. And as you notice, we have now this circular progress component, which is a fully native SwiftUI component. Now, if you're familiar with SwiftUI, you might know that you can use HStacks or VStacks to build your layout. And in this case, we need to use this as well to conform our layout. So let's see this example. I'm going to copy this and paste it in here. Again, we're using the host, and then we have an HStack and a VStack. And we're also rendering some line progress. Let's import this. Okay, hit save, and this is how it looks. You can learn more about what components are available here just by going to the import and see, for example, we have a gauge, group, form, and many more components. Okay, I'm going to undo these changes. And now let's try to actually build a UI that we need. Let's try to build a card that is going to have a slider that the user can use to increase the mood. For example, we can start with devastated all the way to celebrating, and we can change the emoji based on the slider value. So let's do that here. I'm going to create a host, and then we can start adding our UI. So we can import actually a slider from Expo UI, just like that. So let's hit save. Now I can see my slider, but as you notice, is on top of my link in here. And this is because by default, the host view is not going to match the UI hierarchy with React Native. But if we want to do that, we can just pass the match contents property, and then let's refresh on the right. And now it's just next to the modifiers. The match contents property, when true, the host view will update the size in the React Native view tree to match the contents layout from SwiftUI. This is great so that we can combine, regular React Native stuff with Expo UI. Now we cannot do anything with this slider yet, and this is because we need to pass some properties to it. Let's pass a value. We can say 0.5, for example, and now there we have it. Now we can also access the onValueChange event, and this is going to return a value which is of type number, and then we can use this to set our next mood value. By default, this is going to be a value from 0 to 1. So we can actually say that the maximum value is going to be the length of the mood. So let's grab from sad to happy strings dot length -1. That's the maximum. Now in here, I'm going to say const rounded number equal to math.round, and then we can pass the value, and then we can set the emoji from sad to happy at position rounded value, rounded number. And then we can do the same for the mood. This is the string, right? So I'm gonna say from sad to happy string rounded. Okay, cool. Now instead of using this hard-coded value, let's say from sad to happy string index of, and then we can pass the mood. Hit save. All right, now let's see if this works. Okay, awesome. It's working nicely. We can also pass steps, and this will be the number of steps between the minimum, which is 0, all the way to the maximum, which is the length of the strings. So I'm gonna say from sad to happy dot length. Hit save. Okay, and you can feel the steps there. Now, of course, we want to show the emoji. So let's use a text. Okay, I'm importing this text from React Native. We can import text from SwiftUI. We have a text component, and let's change the name to be UI text, for example. And let's come down here and replace it. Let's hit save. You might not notice it, but it looks a bit different. Let me wrap this into a VStack, and then we can add some separation between these items. Okay, there we go. Now it looks better. And VStack takes some properties, as you can see here. And the one that I want to use right now is spacing. When I give it a 16 spacing, and now that's how it looks. Now let's pass the size property here. I'm going to use 32, and let's change it to be 48. And if I switch this, you can see that the emojis are changing, which is really nice. And all this, of course, is native SwiftUI stuff. Now let's change the layout a little bit. I'm going to take this UI text and put it outside. And then instead of rendering the emoji here, I'm going to render the mood string. Now let's wrap this into a VStack. And you can think of VStacks and HStacks like divs or normal views. And then we can also add a spacing if you really want to. But this one is not going to do anything because right now the text is the only item inside this view. Now we have these two VStacks, right? Let's wrap them because I want to align the slider and the emoji face from left to right. So let's use a VStack for that. Hit save. Oh, and sorry, this should be an HStack, by the way. Let's hit save. Okay, now we have this from left to right. Let's add a nice spacing of 32. Okay, nice. Now we have the emoji to the left and we can do stuff on the right with the slider. Now I want to give the content of these views a nice background. So let's wrap this again into a VStack. And as you might expect on SwiftUI, if you are familiar, we can use modifiers to modify the view's properties. So with Expo UI, we can pass the modifiers prop, and this will take an array of modifiers. For example, background. Let's import that from SwiftUI/modifiers, as you can see there. And let's pass a white background and hit save. All right, and as you notice, now is white. Just so that we are on the same page, we are importing the modifiers from here and then the UI from SwiftUI. There are many modifiers that you can use. For example, we can also add a padding of 16. Oh, and by the way, yeah, padding takes some parameters. So you can choose, for example, where do you want the padding? And this is, again, following the SwiftUI practices. And this will add the padding to the current view. So I'm going to say all 16. All right, and look at that, guys. Now it's actually adding the padding outside, which is a bit different from the regular behavior when we're using yoga to style stuff. And we can add the padding to the internal view. For example, this HStack. So I'm going to say here, modifiers, pass the array and say padding of in all places 16. Okay, now that looks better. Of course, we can also use the modifier corner radius. Let's give it a 16 as well. Hit save. Now we have this nice corner radius. Now I want some spacing between the, go to modifiers link here. And what I can do, just say margin bottom of 30. And this will push the SwiftUI view down. Awesome. Now that looks way better, but I would like to show a progress indicator at the bottom of this card. So after this HStack, we can have a linear progress from SwiftUI. This is a self-closing tag and it's going to take some properties. But if I hit save now, it might be hard to see on the video, but it's at the very end, at the very bottom of the card, which I think looks nice. So let's give it a color so that we can see it. I'm gonna say red, okay, and it's not showing the color, and I think that is because the progress is 0. But if I say 0.5, now we can see the red color. So the progress, we actually want to grab it from the current mood. So let's say from sad to happy string.index of mood divided by the length -1. Okay, now let's see if I start increasing this, it's going to do it. Awesome. When I'm at 0, I actually want to have at least, red down here. So we can just increase this by 1 when it's 0. And that's how it looks. Oh yeah. And we need to calculate this before making the division. So let's add parentheses here. And now this would work. Awesome. And now our card is looking way better. Now, I don't really like the color. We need to change this based on the mood. So again, we can just validate the current index and based on that, provide a color. So if it's less than 4, it's going to be red, less than 8, orange, and above that, green. Let's see how that looks. Now it's orange and now it's green when we are celebrating. Nice. And like that, you can keep building your UI. For example, we can start throwing more components in here, like a switch. This will take a value. By default, it's going to be false or true. And again, this is going to be fully native. You can see the liquid glass effect as soon as I use it, which is really nice. Now, a good tip that I want to share is that since this is SwiftUI, these will only work on iOS devices. So what happens if you are supporting Android and other platforms? Well, this is actually going to break your application if you try to import these directly. So what you need to do in that case is create a new component that is going to be just the regular view that you want to use for, let's say, Android or web. So I'm going to create a component, let's say normal view.tsx, right? And here you would implement your card by saying export default function, normal view, and then you would use the regular React Native views. Now, if I come here and say normal view, right now it's not displaying anything, but this will work just fine for Android and web, right? Because we know that the normal view is compatible. But in case you want to use the same view with native primitives using Expo UI, what you can do is create another component with the same name. So let's actually just take this and copy paste to duplicate. And I'm going to change the extension. So I'm going to use the same name, but I'm going to add .ios. Hit enter. And now let's close this. This is the iOS one. Now let's abstract the native logic that we know is not going to work in other platforms. And let's put it in here. Okay. Now let's come back and grab our imports. We are actually going to need our state as well. So let's come back in here, paste the state and our variables. Let's import this from React and hit save. Now I have two components. The first one is going to be the default one used for other platforms. And the one that we are specifying with .ios, it's going to be used for iOS platforms. Now, if we come back here and hit save, as you notice, we still have the view, but the difference is that this is actually going to work on Android as well. Okay. And I just compiled the application for Android and this is how it looks. So I only have one tab at the moment. Let's refresh. I commented out the other tabs because this is the only one that has support for Android as well, right? And as you notice, for example, let's go to the normal view. So if I add a text in my normal view and go to Android, you can see that now it says, hello, other platforms. And for iOS, we are rendering the fully native SwiftUI view. Now, this is how you actually can start implementing logic for iOS only, leveraging SwiftUI, and still have a fallback for other platforms. We're actively working on improving the Android integration using Jetpack Compose, and we hope that for SDK 55, you can actually try the beta for Android as well. And I want to show you a more advanced example that it's actually in the same code base. This is an open source project that I'm going to leave in the description and you can use it for reference. But if I go to my home tab, you can see a more complex view with some examples of the buttons. For example, the glass view using the switch, on a list component using a context menu. And yeah, this looks like that on simulators, but it actually works nice on real devices once you compile it. I think it's a bug with Xcode 26 beta. But yeah, you can have, context menus like that, switch. You can even have these profile settings. And let me show you how this looks on the left. This is the screen that I'm showing you. And as you notice, I'm importing all these from SwiftUI. So all these things, you can use them with Expo UI, SwiftUI, and some modifiers for frame, clip shape, corner radius, foreground color. For the image, I'm using Expo image. And let's take a look at this view, for example. It's just an HStack, adding some frame for the image. The image is using my GitHub image, passing the style because we can actually change the size. For example, if I choose large, we can change the size of the image and everything still looks nice. We also have a theme. We also have a color picker, fully native as well. You can pick the color and you notice that my name changes colors, which is super cool. We have the regular button that you can use with liquid glass effect now available, or glass prominent for primary actions. More examples using the gauge and progress bars, sliders as well. We even have an empty view, the classic iOS view with an empty state. We can also use context menus inside any component. This is really nice because you don't need to install any other dependency. Everything is coming from Expo UI and you can just import it whenever you need it. Context menu is one of the components that I'm going to start implementing in my applications, as well as the daytime picker, because it's really nice that it lives on SwiftUI and I don't have to deal with any other third-party packages. So I would encourage you to clone the repo and check it out yourself to learn more about Expo UI. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention that we also have charts using SwiftUI charts, which is really nice. And this was actually a contribution from the community. And that's the power of open source. We have a really nice animation when we change the data in the chart. All right, so just to quickly recap, Expo UI gives you real SwiftUI primitives in React Native with direct one-to-one mapping. We saw that you can mix React Native components and even use Skia or DOM components as well. Again, this is iOS only, but we also learn how to create fallbacks for other platforms, so you can actually start integrating it now. Personally, I'm super excited for the beta version of iOS, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comments, but I think this is a huge step forward, making native UI a first-class citizen inside React Native applications. So let me know in the comments what you think. Also check out the description for more resources about how to adopt Liquid Glass in your Expo application. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.